welcome to Stronger. Well, guys, I think they've almost felt like they've gotten a parenting seminar this week.
Right.
But it's just one of the great illustrations of how God works with us.
Absolutely.
And how God is so just like a great parent working in our lives, for us to change. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper again to finish off the week on last weekend, which was these ravines are there to deepen our dependence on God, to prepare us for a better place and better future. Yeah. And it's also there that we understand God has a purpose and plan, and so we really trust that. He hasn't forgot who we are and what he's doing in our life. Yeah. So these things can really do some amazing work in our life. Now, I want to start off with just a little story from the New Testament about a dad that's always amazed me. Jesus told the story about the prodigal son. And but it's the father that catches me. The son's behavior is predictable. Yeah. The father's behavior is the one that's not. Because that's the one that seems strange. That the father acted the way he did. Yeah. So there's this amazing response from this dad, guys. The son basically says, I want my inheritance now, not when you die. I want it now. And so sign it over and I'm out of here. And that's what he did. The dad gave him it. He gave him, Like, that's the first thing. I'm like, whoa, okay. And then he goes and he wastes it all. But then there's this internal thing that he finally comes to through pain. Yeah. A ravine. Yeah. Where he's lost it all. He's cut off from all of the friends he had made with his money. And he now is a nobody in a land. He knows no one, in a place where he eats the husks that he's feeding the pigs. And he wakes up one morning and says, comparative model, my servants, the dad's servants are treated really, really good. I'm going to go home and be a servant. Something in the internal change. He comes home and the dad has no teaching moment with him. Right. Yeah. Because you see, once the internal dials are done, the teaching's done. Yeah. And it's an amazing story. So we want to dive a little deeper on certain aspects of this ravine. So it's going to be question discussion again. So let's dive in a little bit.
Sure. I've got one. How do you know when it's time to climb out of the ravine? How do you know when you've reached that point that, okay, God, I think you've done in me what you intended to. I think I'm understanding what you want me to do here. How do you know when that time is?
See, it's good. Let's just take the question and rework the question a little bit, the language of it a bit this way. We don't climb out of ravines. God has to carry us out of them.
Oh, that was going to be my follow-up.
Number one. Okay, it's a work of God. He sent Elijah out. He dried up the brook.
Right.
He said, okay, we're done here. Phase 2. Yeah. On to phase 2. Let's go. Yeah. So if you find yourself climbing out of ravines, you're probably climbing out too soon. Right. And now you're going to take the ravine with you. Yeah. So you climbed out of a ravine, but the ravine stayed in you. And now you've got the fear of ever being there again. You're going to try and go forward in a future that's controlled by that. You're taking the pain of the ravine out, the isolation, what you were cut off from. You're carrying all the negatives of the ravine and nothing positive.
So much worse off.
So much worse off because the internals are also prepared for what the external world's about to bring.
Right.
So the cave-in is coming. Yeah. And that ravine is going to blow you up every time. So that's why with the prodigal son story, that's why there had to be that moment in time. One of the most amazing things about that story to me is the father never went to that land.
Yeah. Yes. Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, he longed for him, but
to change the external circumstance. He never went and said, how is my son? Is he alive? Is my son, eating? Is he, he didn't.
So hard.
How hard that would have been. Yeah. That father instead let the ravine work.
Wow.
One of the worst things you can do in parenting is to actually take the power out of the ravines.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Make sense?
Absolutely.
So we don't climb out. We're taken out because we've been prepared.
Right.
And it's kind of like you leave the ravine because God just says, hey, we're done. Let's go. Brook has dried up. Let's go forward. I'm taking you from here, next phase. And it's the most natural thing because the ravine did its work.
Yeah.
And the teach is over. And you can now go on prepared for the next thing that's coming.
Yeah,
Does that?
Yeah, that does. And actually sort of a follow-up observation kind of question for that would be then, if a person is up there in experience and age, but they've never really dealt with or allowed those certain ravines in the past to do their work, there's still hope for them. They can still go back and allow the process to unfold that God wanted back then.
Exactly, Brent. And you took the right view. That's a person that has to go back a bit. There are times to go back.
Yeah.
But you go back to the ravine. And it's like, because the ravine never left you. The fact is you packed it and took it. So now let's get your perspective. You're carrying this ravine. Why don't we just go back to that? Yeah. And let's fully experience what you need to experience in this ravine.
Wow.
Okay? And that's times where, sometimes it's counseling.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a good friend. Sometimes it's a message. Sometimes it's a long journey or a short journey.
Yeah.
But you have to go back and let the ravine do its work rather than you taking it with you into the future. You leave it behind because it did the work.
Right.
And I've walked away with what it was meant to teach me and make me.
Wow.
So, there's times you have to go back.
Incredible.
Not fun to go back sometimes because the fear... They have this, they never lived in God's presence deeply in that ravine. So it doesn't hold that sense of God's presence for them. They have to go back and discover God's presence.
Right. It really gives a person, I think, an opportunity. Like if you were to take a step study and Celebrate Recovery, it really, that's sort of the path you go down. You almost revisit from when you were young up until current stage just to sort of get to know yourself all over again in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You do. You go back to discover God's presence, and how you discover God's presence, even going back there, is you then now start doing the little obediences, right? That we've talked about before.
Back to basics.
And because that's what needs to happen in the ravine, is you're doing these little obediences to the inner calls a lot.
Yeah.
The attitudinal things, not just the external morals, but the things behind that.
Yeah.
So if you keep visiting that same ravine over and over, that means you just haven't done that. You haven't allowed God to do what he needed to do.
Yeah, and exactly. Like the ravine's in you, you're not in the ravine.
Yeah.
And so you're in a position where you've made this a permanent thing in your life. And these are never designed for permanence.
Right.
In fact, God's presence found in the ravines, when you really learn that deeper dependence on God, you're letting him work the internal things, that the cutoff and all the distractions are allowing you to focus on those things in your life. And when you actually trust God's plan, when that deeper stuff is done in that ravine, then you can walk out of that ravine and leave it behind and truly go to phase 2. You'll see this in things, whether it's wealth, health, or whether it is relationships. You'll see relationships, they keep carrying the ravine with them.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. You'll see the patterns, the cycles in wealth and health, they keep carrying the ravine with them.
Right.
And that's making something permanent that was never meant to be permanent. Yeah. It's meant to be left behind. You bring the changes, you make the changes with God's power and wisdom in your life. Right. And now you can move into that next phase.
So if you don't move on to that and you don't take full advantage of that and you're stuck in that ravine and you can't actually move on to the next thing, will the pressures from outside, will God let them become more intense? Will he bring you to something bigger, even though you are not prepared for it? You're not.
Sure. Look, the future's always got a bigger thing to it, but he doesn't need it. Your internals are not prepared for even the normal things.
Right.
So what you're doing, if you have left that ravine and you're taking it with you. You know,
Yeah.
you didn't
Yeah.
really, you can't walk away from it, and you're walking into the future, and life is coming at you. The kid that at 15 never learned to actually move out of that self-centered use of anger
Yeah.
is going to use that when he's 25 and married.
Right.
And so there is marriage. God didn't say, well, I'm going to make you married now so I can work on you. No, no, no.
Yeah.
You're going to make your choices. Life gets bigger.
Yeah.
It just keeps
It
getting
just
bigger.
does.
Yeah.
But you're not prepared. And so you're going to end up in a very tough position
Right.
because the internals will never match the pressure of the externals. And that's why it's so incredibly important to not let the ravine be in charge, but you move from reaction to response, learned response, as God has cut you off for him to do these things. Deeper dependence, work on the things that you'd never even look at because you're cut off,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and get you ready for the next phase. And now trust God's plan, even though you're stuck there for a long time sometimes.
Man, he's really got intricate plans, eh?
He's so good.
He is so good.
Yeah, and it just, all this discussion reminds me of how into the details he is with us, but also how intentional we really need to be to recognize these things when they come into our lives, and to work those little processes, those little obediences. Man, those become paramount. Those become so important.
They sure do. So don't miss the opportunities that ravines bring. It's easy to.
Yeah.
It can seem like you can escape from the pain. No, you can only take it with you, and that pain will always be familiar.
Yeah.
It'll always be something that's the same that you took with you. And now add fear to it.
Yeah.
And now you've got a weakened condition to deal with life. You're way back. Trust God. Experience the ravine. You may need people to stand with you. But I would at least say, just say, God, I don't want to kick these things with me anymore.
Yeah.
I just ask that you and I give me a season that I just want to surrender this stuff, and I want to start moving into health and wholeness again. I need the ravine to work in me, and I need you to be actually able to build in me the things that I need. I hope you've enjoyed this week, and I hope that it's done some good work in you. God bless.